Tony Perez for He got it! He got it! Perfection in Pittsburgh!
You believe in miracles? Yes!
The Bills make me wanna shout.
Nobody circles the wagons like the Buffalo Bills.
This is the Jube Alert on WNIA Radio. Here are your hosts, Greg Jube and Kyle Barker.
Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Monday, November 2nd, 2015, and this is the Jube Alert here on WNIA Niagara University's Mix and More Radio. Alongside Kyle Barker, I am Greg Jubert. Lots that happened over the course of this past weekend, so we're going to jump off to the big story that broke with last night, the 2015 World Series between the Kansas City Royals and the New York Mets. The series ended, actually, just like I predicted when we were talking about this back on Friday night. I said the Mets would be behind Noah Syndergaard and win Game 3, but would end up falling in 5. And that's just exactly what happened yesterday. Matt Harvey may have stuck out there a little too long trying to go into the 9th inning, let Terry Collins help persuade him to stay in, and eventually choked with a leadoff double, and then it ended up in shambles. Game went into extras. Addison Reed and Bartolo Colon gave up big runs, ending with a final score of 7-2. So the Royals, congratulations to them, winning their first World Series since 1985. Obviously, the Royals last season was a big deal, losing in Game 7, leaving the tying run on third base with Alex Gordon. This year they made sure to be all in, all chips in the middle of the table for this year, because they knew, like with any team, the window of opportunity always closes. And I think looking at the Royals going through and weaving their way throughout the playoffs, and you saw they were the best team in the American League all year. I mean, you saw Toronto got hot there at the very end of the season. You saw Texas came out of nowhere. The Astros did pretty well too. But the Royals were far and away the best team. And the All-Star voting was another sign of that, looking at how Salvador Perez, Alex Gordon, among others, were respected in that. And you look at what the Royals compare to the Mets in terms of their windows of opportunity. The Royals really don't have too many legitimate power threats on their level, I think. And you look at last year, after the Royals lost the World Series, they didn't lose a lot of pieces. They lost Billy Butler to Oakland. They didn't want him in free agency. He's off with the A's. And he turned out not to be too significant of a player lost in that deal. And then you look at James Shields, who struggled mightily for big game James, struggled mightily in the World Series, ended up in San Diego, which is all of a sudden turned into a hitter-friendly ballpark thanks to the winds and everything out there in San Diego. So they had pretty much the same team, same core together. And even looking at next year, a lot of these pieces are going to be right there with them still. I mean, when you look at the contributors that will be gone, Alex Rios, chances are, he's 34. He'll probably walk. Johnny Cueto was really going to be, chances are, a 2-month rental. So I wouldn't expect Cueto to be back. He'll probably get a big deal somewhere, whether it's with the Dodgers or another team in need of pitching. That's to be determined. Ben Zobrist came in the trade deadline as a really big player. They thought maybe he missed time in the World Series on paternity leave. That was not the case. And Chris Young, who pitched a lot in the World Series actually this year, he's 36. He might come back on a smaller deal. And one of the guys not on the World Series roster that was with the Royals near the end of this year, of course, was Johnny Gomes. He also can walk as a free agent. So you look at the Royals' big pieces between Hosmer, Moustakas, Escobar, Gordon, Kane, Dyson, Perez. They're all there, and that's just positional players. You look at the Mets, on the other hand. Mets might need a little more. Bartolo Colon is 42. He might end up retiring. Daniel Murphy's going to be the big guy to look at with the way he played up to through the NLCS. Bobby Parnell, Tyler Clippard, Juan Uribe, who turned out to be a big acquisition and a big loss at one point. Yoenis Cespedes, which was just reported today that the Mets would, chances are, not re-sign Cespedes. So he may very well end up with yet another team. According to ESPN, the Mets are, quote, highly unlikely to re-sign Cespedes. They are expected to, quote, modestly pursue him. So we'll see how much they're willing to invest in, a guy with a cannon of an arm and, a flashy bat, too. A guy who's proven that he can hit 20 home runs in this league year in and year out. So your first thoughts about, anything that's happened between the Royals or the Mets or the series as a whole?
Well, last night was an interesting game. I'm sure Terry Collins would like to redo the entire ninth inning. If this is a regular season game, you're giving Matt Harvey the ball, going out there, giving him a complete game, an opportunity for a complete game shutout. But in the World Series, if you're thinking about what's ahead, you got to save the arm. Familia hasn't blown very many saves, if at all, this season. Has a couple of slip-ups in the postseason, but you have to save Harvey's arm in case you do, in fact, make it to Game 7. Maybe pitch him on very short rest, have your best pitcher available. You got to save the arm. And it was also interesting last night how Daniel Murphy went from hero to zero in a matter of 5 games. He was the sole reason that team pretty much got to the World Series, and he had a bunch of costly errors in different games that allowed the Royals to really jump ahead of the Mets in this series. Interesting statistic, though, from the World Series here. The amount of innings played in the World Series, the Mets led 20 at one point. They had the lead in 24 innings compared to Kansas City's 13 innings. The Mets were dominating for most of these games and kind of fell apart. It was not a 5-game series at all. It was very competitive, very entertaining baseball. And congrats to the Kansas City Royals, the 2015 World Series champions. A very, very well built-up team from top to bottom, from the hitting rotation, from relief pitching to starting pitching. They had all the pieces that they needed to go out and get this title this year. They were no fluke being in the World Series last year. They just kind of ran into some history of Madison Bumgarner. Credit to George Brett and the staff there in Kansas City. Wonderful job this season by the Kansas City Royals.
Here's the thing with the Harvey deal, and I remember watching this when they were talking about it after the 8th inning about a decision that would have to be made. In the 2 innings prior, in the 7th and 8th inning, it only took Harvey 9 pitches to get out of those situations. Well and away over 100 pitches at that point. And you're talking about a guy who has had Tommy John surgery before. I don't know what you do in that situation. If you let him go, or you have the confidence to fully invest in Familia for the 9th inning, and you looked and you could see on the Fox telecast when they were in the dugout, Harvey with the pitching coach talking about, that chances are Harvey was going to be pulled for the 9th, and you could hear Harvey mouth, "Oh, no, I'm not," or "Oh, no, you won't," in regards to taking him out. And then he went from the pitching coach straight to Terry Collins to talk about it. So I don't know what you can do in that situation, though. That's really tough. And that might be something that comes back to haunt the Mets for a long time, is that situation. I mean, can you blame Terry Collins? No, because, again, it took him 18 pitches to get through 2 innings. He averaged 3 pitches a batter. And he has been an incredible pitcher all year long. And there should be no pitch count because it's the last game of the year. Now, maybe there should be a pitch count because, he has had Tommy John surgery. But, I mean, it was a big deal in the game yesterday. It ended up changing all the momentum in that game. That plus, I want to talk about that throw from first to home a little bit. When Salvador Perez, with a runner on third, hit a ground ball with Familia pitching, hit a ground ball up to Alcides Escobar at short, throws it over to first, they get the out, Hosmer sprints home, and Lucas Duda throws a ball that I'm sure he has thrown hundreds of times by now, is that throw to the home plate. And he sailed it wide left across his body. And it's, I played first base for a long time, and it's the same thing. When you go and you rush that throw, you're not going to get it right on the money, right in the where you want it, right where the glove is. And that was another perfect example yesterday. And the Mets just got a little too quick. They waited. They did the right thing. Waiting, holding. Or, I'm sorry, they didn't throw to Escobar at short. My bad, because that's Kansas City's guy, of course. Yep. Ground ball is short to first. And they did the right thing. They went and they looked at him. They looked and checked the runner back at third. They got that throw quickly to first. They got the out. And then the play at the plate. It's just a play you have to make. If you're a first baseman in this league and you've played that position and you've played it so many times, that same throw, it's something you work on in spring training in February. It's something you do all season, plays like that. it's just a mistake that you can't afford to make, let alone on the biggest stage.
He would have been out by a mile, too. And as remarkably bad of a throw that was by Lucas Duda, Travis Darno almost caught that ball. And if he caught the ball, I think 100% that he would have been able to turn around and tag the runner out. It was a really gutsy run in that situation. David Wright checked off the runner, got the out at first, and then to go home in that situation, that's a really, really gutsy play. But it's the type of play that you have to make sometimes in order to win the World Series. And then it ties the game, and then they explode for 5 in the 12th inning. You just kind of had that sense it was coming. The Mets were just desperately clinging to whatever life they had, and it drastically fell apart in the 12th inning. Gutsy. That's all I can say is gutsy right there.
And you look at, like we talked about, the Royals not really having a big threat in this American League. And the Mets' window of opportunity, even with all that great pitching, between a front four of Harvey, DeGrom, Syndergaard, Matz, and Zach Wheeler coming back next year, you're still talking about a National League that will include the Cardinals, who will continue to be resilient, and 2 other teams in the National League Central, and the Pirates and the Cubs, who will be right back in the thick of things too. You look at the Dodgers will be there, I'm sure, and you have the Giants. They always play the year-on, year-off deal. Well, next year, if history shows, will be their year to jump back on. So you're talking about the Mets. They did a lot better than I think a lot of people will give them credit for, because you look at, that was a division, everybody from Sports Illustrated and ESPN down, they picked the National League East to go straight to the Nationals. With Scherzer, it was a no-brainer. Washington never got it together all year. The Mets took advantage of that, and by the time the All-Star break came, the Mets were already starting to pull away more and more. So you look at, is the division, again, a very good possibility for next year? Absolutely. Absolutely. The Mets can go back and win that National League East, even with the pitching Washington has, because they proved it. But to go back to the World Series, they're going to have to be running on all cylinders, and they're going to need a hero like Daniel Murphy was for a while. So that'll be interesting to tell. Once again, congratulations to the Kansas City Royals. They win Game 5 yesterday, 7-2, and take the World Series in 5 games. So, no baseball until spring training now. Wow. Okay, well, we're going to shift our gears now from one big game that happened yesterday to the other big game in primetime last night on NBC. Sunday Night Football between 2 undefeated teams, both 6-0, in the Broncos and Packers. And wow, did this game not go the way I thought it was going to. This was the first time, the NBC telecast also mentioned, the first time that 2 undefeated teams have played each other this late in a season, since the Pats and the Colts did it when the Patriots were on their undefeated 16-0 season back in 2007. You're talking about Green Bay, high-flying, always top of the league offense. Even without Jordy Nelson, you look at James Jones' comeback, and Green Bay's offense has just been doing everything and taking advantage of teams left and right. You look at Denver this season, has come away with some squeaky wins this year. You're talking about in Oakland, only won because of a pick 6 by Chris Harris Jr. Cleveland was just a crapshoot in Cleveland against Josh McCown and the Browns in a game that went to overtime. You're looking at left and right games. Every single game has come down to 12 points or less until last night. Every game came down to a single score, with the exception of one in their other Sunday night appearance at Detroit. But boy, did Peyton Manning look great yesterday. And it's something we haven't seen a lot of this year. He's really been struggling between the older age, the neck rotation, the arm might not be what it used to be. But he, yesterday, despite not throwing a touchdown, was phenomenal. And Denver's offense really showed up yesterday for the first time all year as they beat Green Bay 29-10. And people were left and right calling Denver a fluke, as they should. They should have been calling them a fluke, because they had gotten away with a lot of wins thanks to their defense. But Peyton Manning yesterday looked like the Peyton Manning of old. 21 for 29 for 340 and a pick. No scores, but he still got the ball in. You look at C.J. Anderson had 101 yards and a score on the ground. And you look at Demaryius Thomas, ended up with 8 catches for 168 yards. And on top of that, Green Bay, that offense, which again has been flourishing all year, got shut down by a very, very legitimate Super Bowl contending Denver defense. It's led by Von Miller, and DeMarcus Ware's hurt now, but Aqib Talib and Chris Harris and a bunch of other big guys, a bunch of other big names that have been out there this year. Aaron Rodgers yesterday only threw for 77 yards. That's the worst he's ever done in a game that he's both finished and started. I mean, it was a total shock when I thought for sure like Denver's defense would win this game if anything. But I thought Green Bay's offense is just doing so well right now. And Eddie Lacy's getting back. He's been nursing some injuries for a bit. But man, Denver came to play yesterday. And I'm not saying that they're going to make it and be as good as New England or Cincinnati. When you look at the AFC, those three teams right now are the cream of the crop. And I'm not going to say that between New England's high-flying offense and Cincinnati's overall team play, Denver is on that same level necessarily. But boy, does Denver's D give them a good run for their money. I mean, they've just been so much fun to watch all year. They've just done good things left and right. Any thoughts on Denver?
Well, here's an interesting stat that I've been looking at for the past couple of days. Man, I think the phrase defense wins games or defense wins championships is very true at this moment. Denver is obviously the number one defense in the league. They're only giving up 261 yards a game. Only 170 of those are passing yards. But here on the flip end of this, the San Diego Chargers have the best offense in the league with 423 yards a game. They're one of the best offenses in the league, and they're 2-6.
Yes, but look at San Diego's games. Look at all of them. Look at all of them, though. Look how many of these games could have gone the other way. They lost to Cincinnati by 5. Minnesota, they lost by 17. But Steelers by 4. Packers by 7. Raiders by 8. Ravens by 3. I mean, you're looking at a team there, with the exception of that Vikings game, could legitimately be right now 7-1. Honestly, if you flip around everything.
Right. Well, and the crux of the disconnect here, the defense for the Chargers is not that good. So here's the point I'm trying to make. You can have a number one offense, and your defense can be subpar, and that does not really going to guarantee you games. If your defense, like Denver's defense can hold you in games for as long as they can and allow you 8 weeks for your offense to try to find something to spark it, you're a dangerous team. And that's a team that is destined to make a nice run in the playoffs here. The Denver offense at one point in the season was last in the league. Now, over the past 3 weeks, they've climbed their way back up to the 17th highest offense in the National Football League. But it just goes to show you that if you have a good defense, things can go right for you. And that Denver defense held a great Green Bay offense to 10 points yesterday. That is, I mean, I don't think any other team in the league, any defense in the league, can hold Green Bay to 10 points. Any team.
Though Buffalo did give them a good run for their money last year. They were right in the thick of things in that game, too.
Yep.
And you would think that Green Bay would still be able to do well on the home. I mean, obviously, you don't have the Lambeau advantage. But, wow, Denver, like you talked about, number one defense in the league, number one passing defense in the league, and 4th running D in the league. I mean, that's a Super Bowl contender defense. Legitimately. I know we're only halfway through the season, but you look at now, they're 7-0. They have a 3-game lead over anybody in the division. Second is Oakland, which we'll get to if we have time.
Barely any injuries, too.
Do you consider that's very true with the exception of DeMarcus Ware?
Whose injury is not very significant at all. He's kind of like on a day-to-day status. Week to week, we'll put it as that.
Do you think Denver's a Super Bowl contender?
I think Denver,
as of right now,
I think Denver is a very legitimate Super Bowl contender. Absolutely.
It depends. If Payton shows more of what he did yesterday, and that yesterday wasn't a flash in the bucket of last season, or his whole career for that matter, because if it goes back to the same old Payton, who's been struggling all year, only has thrown 7 TDs, not the Peyton Manning that we've been accustomed to for the last 15 years. It's going to depend on him. Denver's defense will take them as far as they can, but when it comes to Peyton Manning, that's going to be the next step going forward. And he has the weapons. You saw Demaryius Thomas, Emmanuel Sanders, the tight end game with Jacob Tamme. I mean, they have the weapons. It's just about if Peyton Manning can hit him, use him in stride, make adjustments based on maybe his age and his body status. So that's go ahead.
Well, here's the thing. If the Denver offense has been improving every week, man, I can't wait to see the Denver offense next week. Because like you said, Peyton Manning looked best game of the season by far for Peyton Manning. And when you have a defense, like I said, that's given you 8 weeks to try to allow your offense to figure it out, and what's wrong with that offense? Dangerous team in the Denver Broncos right now.
Now, both of these teams play really, really big games next week, but neither one is slated for prime time, believe it or not. Denver will be going to Indianapolis to battle the Colts, so Peyton Manning will once again return to Indy. So that will be a big game to watch, and I think with the way Andrew Luck's been playing through fractured ribs all year, since week 3, I think Denver's defense could give him a very bad day. And then you look at Green Bay, goes to Carolina next Sunday at 1. And Carolina, who plays tonight on Monday night, is going to, I'm sure, come out with all their weapons. They've now gone over the hump in beating Seattle. Now they want to prove like that wasn't a fluke, and we're going to be legitimate Super Bowl contenders too. So that's something to watch. So once again, Denver at Indianapolis next week, Green Bay at Carolina next week. And before we go to break, I want to talk about one team that really drew my eyes in particular yesterday. It was the only other late o'clock game with the exception of the Seahawks and Cowboys. And that's the Oakland Raiders. And we've talked about, and everybody knows that since their Super Bowl in 2002, Oakland has struggled for answers left and right. Quarterback play, players with poor off-the-field records, the list goes on. Oakland has really struggled and have not been able to make a run to the playoffs since that 2002 season led by Rich Gannon. Now in Derek Carr, which looks like a fantastic move, you're talking about a team that in a very weak AFC, with the exception of those 3 teams, New England, Cincinnati, Denver, has a legitimate shot, I think, at being a playoff team. You look at, since they were 11-5 and went to the Super Bowl that year, they've had 2 years, 2010 and 11, where they were led by Jason Campbell, among other quarterbacks, in which they went 8-8. And every other season since then, you're looking at, they've been somewhere between 2 and 5 wins each year. And you look at the fact that in building a rookie quarterback last year with Derek Carr, the number one thing that they could have done to help him, they did, and that was to get a solid offensive line, which was top of the league last year. And this season, only 3 other teams in the NFL have given up fewer sacks than the Raiders' O-line. The Jets, Redskins, Bengals. 10 sacks this year through 8 games. Pretty good. Pretty good. And then you look at, now you have drafted Amari Cooper as a solid weapon. You got Michael Crabtree, who's been to the highest level this game has to offer in a Super Bowl and multiple NFC championship games. You look at all these other pieces. You have the defensive leadership of Charles Woodson, which has been huge. He got a 65th pick, in fact, yesterday, tying him for 5th on the all-time list. I mean, you're talking about that was a Jets team yesterday that came in flying high. Yes, Ryan Fitzpatrick got hurt with a non-throwing thumb, and Geno Smith got a little nicked up too. But the Raiders had their way yesterday, early, and they were able to hold that lead, just like with San Diego the week before. A San Diego's team that, once again, their record is not indicative of how they play.
Well, Oakland has a very young, youthful team with an ageless wonder at safety, and he's leading the league in interceptions. They're a team to not push aside here. If you had to pick Oakland and the Jets, and you had to ask which team has a better shot at making the playoffs, I'm picking Oakland.
Over the Jets in the playoffs.
Yep. Well, to make the playoffs.
Right.
And I think it's because Oakland is just a team in that AFC on that side of the nation there, and they're just so youthful. And when they make mistakes, they put their heads back up, try to run the same stuff again, and they try to play as hard as they can. And the Jets are a little bit more experienced, but they're in a much tougher division with the Patriots in there. I mean, you got the big bad bear, just the Patriots just looming over those teams in the AFC East. I mean, we'll see what happens here, but I would pick the Raiders over the Jets at this point in time to make the playoffs.
It would be tough for me to pull away from that, but you look at also Revis and Sheldon Richardson. Jets defense is right there too. But man, Charles.
Here's the thing: the Bills could come alive at any moment now too. The Bills
there's a lot of teams
struggling.
There's a lot of teams in the AFC that are right on the cusp of, hitting gold. You have a lot of teams left and right with 3 or 4 wins.
Mm-hmm. I think the Bills could potentially be a team that catches up to the Jets. I don't see the Chargers and the Kansas City Chiefs catching up to the Oakland Raiders in that division there. So that's where I see how Oakland could make the playoffs here as a wild card and the Jets not. Because I could see the Jets possibly losing games down the stretch to the Dolphins and the Bills. And, I mean, that's just how I see it.
Man, is Charles Woodson incredible, though. He's been everything for this Raiders. Oldest player in the NFL at 39, 8-time Pro Bowler, 65 picks, and his second all-time in pick sixes with 11. I mean, he's, like you said, an ageless wonder, and somebody who will definitely be seen in Canton not too far from now. But the Raiders as a playoff team, boy, it's been a while since we've said anything like that. It really has. And they've put together 2 really great wins these last 2 weeks. And you look at the week before, one Derek Carr mistake made all the difference. Otherwise, they would have beaten a very good Denver team led by that defense, and they lost 16-10. So the Raiders are definitely a team we're going to keep our eye on. I think certainly looking forward. So next week, the Raiders will come to the East Coast, where they will battle Big Ben and the Steelers. When we come back, we're going to go through all of the games from this past Sunday, including, of course, speaking of the Steelers, a significant injury that could change the Steelers' entire season. What is it? That and more when we come back to the Jube on WNIA, Niagara University's Mix and More Radio.
Hit on the throw. He has his man. It's Hogan into the end zone for the Buffalo touchdown. Taylor's going to take a shot. He's got his man Harvin caught in the end zone for the Buffalo touchdown.
Buffalo Bills football on Fox and CBS all season long.
Hi, Kyle Barker here for the Jube. Ever need a custom banner for your birthday party or graduation party? Well, be sure to check out bannerenvy.net. Custom banners for life's big moments. With banners recruiting for birthday, graduation, anniversary, sports, baby shower, retirement, and welcome home ceremonies, Banner Envy has a banner suited for your needs. It's so easy to create a banner. You choose your own banner, customize it with your own photo and name, and check out your order. With great deals in all sizes, 6-foot banners are starting now at $69. Again, that's bannerenvy.net, and if you order today, you'll get free shipping with your order. That's bannerenvy.net.
This is the Jube Alert on WNIA Radio. Here are your hosts, Greg Jubert and Kyle Parker.
All right, here we are just past the bottom of the hour here on the Jube Alert on WNIA, Niagara University's Mix and More Radio. Alongside Kyle Barker, I am Greg Jubert. Now we're going to get into what is my favorite part of every week, Recap Monday of all the games in the NFL this past Sunday. 4 teams had byes: Buffalo, Philly, Jacksonville, Washington. Back on Thursday night, New England, as we mentioned last week, rolled all over Miami 35-7. So we're going to get into all the big games now from this past Sunday. Let's start off across the pond in another London game as the struggling Lions went and battled the Chiefs. And boy, did the Chiefs have their way with Detroit's defense all game long. Alex Smith, an unlikely runner, had a 49-yard run on Detroit's defense and a 12-yard run for a score. Alex Smith also threw for 145 yards and 2 TDs, one to Jeremy Maclin and another to Travis Kelce. On top of that, Kansas City, Sharkandrick West had 97 yards and a score. Detroit, on the other hand, Calvin Johnson got a little banged up with an ankle injury, still had 5 catches for 85 yards. Matt Stafford, at the very end, actually was removed from the game. Backup Dan Orlovsky came in for 2 passes. Detroit struggles once again. They fall to 1-7. Kansas City is now 3-5.
In Atlanta, Georgia yesterday, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers blew a late 17-point lead but got a 31-yard field goal from Connor Barth in overtime to beat the mistake-prone Atlanta Falcons 23-20 yesterday. Matt Ryan tied the game on an 8-yard touchdown pass to Julio Jones with 17 seconds left in regulation. The Bucs got the ball in overtime, couldn't get a touchdown in the first drive, scored a field goal, and then stopped Atlanta on 4 downs to win the game. Tampa Bay improves to 3-4, and the Falcons are now 6-2. They have lost 2 in a row after going 6-0 to start the season.
To Baltimore we go, where the Chargers at 2-5 were struggling. They battled the Ravens at 1-6. Steve Smith had 5 catches for 82 yards on the day, including a nice 46-yard catch. But Smith would leave the game with turned out to be a torn Achilles. He will be out for the rest of the season. He was already banged up, playing through injuries already, trying to stay through for this year. Joe Flacco, 25 for 37, 319 yards and a score. As for Phillip Rivers, 28 for 37, 301 yards and 3 scores, including 2 to Malcolm Floyd, who had 92 yards on the day. San Diego got beat up left and right, though. Stevie Johnson and 3 O-linemen, among others, got hurt. Melvin Gordon only averaged 3 yards per carry, 18 for 54. San Diego still looking for answers. Struggles. They fall to 2-6. Baltimore gets their second victory of the season on a Justin Forsett last-minute field goal.
In Chicago yesterday, an NFC North matchup between the Vikings and the Bears, Adrian Peterson ran for 103 yards, and Blair Walsh kicked a 36-yard field goal as time expired to lift the Minnesota Vikings to a 23-20 win over the Chicago Bears yesterday. The Vikings had dropped 7 straight at Soldier Field, but the streak ended yesterday. Jay Cutler rolled to his right yesterday and plowed over safety Harrison Smith for a 4-yard touchdown with just under 5 minutes remaining, but the late score lifted Minnesota to a 5-2 record and its 3rd straight win. Again, that's the Vikings 23-20 over the Chicago Bears.
In Cleveland, the Cardinals struggled early against the Browns. Brian Hartline with 2 touchdowns on the day on 4 catches for 32 yards, but Arizona came charging right back. They ended up scoring the final 27 points in the game. Carson Palmer threw for 4 scores. Michael Floyd, the former Notre Dame product, 4 catches for 106 yards, and including a 60-yard bomb from Palmer, ended up being the leading receiver. Chris Johnson, formerly known as CJ 2K, had 30 runs for 109 yards. Carson Palmer ended up going 23 for 36 for 374 yards, 4 scores, and a pick. As for Josh McCown, 18 for 34, 211 yards, 3 TDs and a score. Johnny Manziel came in late, 3 for 6 for 12 yards. Cleveland now is 2-6. Arizona continues to fly high, especially after last week in, I believe it was St. Louis.
Correct.
Check that, actually. That was Cleveland last week, because Josh McCown, like we said, ran into the wall. Forgot about that. So once again, that's Arizona soaring to 6-2. Arizona beat Baltimore on Monday night last week. That's what it was. So Arizona 6-2, Cleveland's 2-6. Arizona wins big.
In Houston yesterday, the Houston Texans D-line got to Zach Mettenberger early and often yesterday. They sacked Mettenberger 7 times in a 20-6 victory. A 21-yard touchdown reception by DeAndre Hopkins put Houston on top in the second quarter, and the Texans didn't trail after that. Nate Washington's 42-yard touchdown extended the lead to 17-6 in the third quarter. Brian Hoyer had 235 yards and 2 scores, and Houston tied a franchise record with, like I said, 7 sacks in the game. Tennessee falls to 1-6. Houston is improving. They get the win 20-6 at home.
If you had the Giants or the Saints defense in fantasy this week, you picked a very bad week to use them in a game that featured minimal defensive play in the Superdome, as Eli Manning and Drew Brees flashed all the potential in the world that they could have to hype up a team. Eli Manning, 30 for 41 for 350 yards. OBJ, 8 catches for 130 yards and 3 scores. Shane Vereen also with 8 catches for 60 yards and a score. As for the Saints, Drew Brees tied an NFL record with 7 TDs thrown on 511 yards and an 80% completion percentage. Ben Watson was the big receiver, 147 yards on 9 catches and a score. Marcus Colston also 114 yards and a score. Brandon Cooks had 2 TDs to go with his 88 yards on the day. New Orleans is flying high. The Giants crumbled a little bit right there, but Saints are now 4-4. The Giants are also at 500 at 4-4 as well. In the very end, Saints win 52-49 on a last-second field goal. The Saints have won 3 in a row and 4 out of 5. They might just be legit. We'll see. For a wild card spot, that is. Saints beat the Giants in the Superdome.
Crazy game yesterday at Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. Andy Dalton threw a touchdown pass with 2:57 to go, and then the Bengals picked off Ben Roethlisberger twice in the fourth quarter while rallying for a 16-10 victory over the Steelers on Sunday that keeps them unbeaten and a commanding lead in the AFC North. The Bengals are 7-0 for the first time in their history and have a more than comfortable lead in their division. Le'Veon Bell left this game yesterday with a gruesome-looking knee injury. He left sitting upright in a cart. His status of what exactly the injury is unknown, but it is pretty much determined that he will miss the rest of the season. He is out indefinitely. Again, the Bengals stay alive and stay undefeated. They beat the Steelers 16-10 on the road.
Le'Veon Bell was reported yesterday that his ACL was intact, but it was a horrific MCL injury. He is expected to be put on IR later this week. So that's a MCL tear for Steelers running back Le'Veon Bell. Moving to St. Louis now, where the struggling 49ers battled the Rams. And boy, did Todd Gurley have another great day again yesterday. You can't stop Todd Gurley. You can only hope to contain him. He proved that again yesterday. A 71-yard run up the middle went untouched. 20 carries for 133 yards in that score. Nick Foles, 14 for 23 for 191, and a score to Tavon Austin, who had 4 catches for 98 yards on the day. Austin also with a nice run later on in the game, a 2-yard run. As for the 49ers, their woes with Colin Kaepernick continue to happen. Colin Kaepernick, 20 for 41 for 62 yards. Not a lot of big players for the 49ers. They fall to 2-6. More about Kaepernick in our page 2s. Once again, that is the Rams, proving that they might just be a playoff team as well in that NFC. They are 4-3. Again, the 49ers fall to 2-6. St. Louis wins big, 27-6.
Derek Carr had a wonderful day yesterday. He was 23 for 36, 333 yards, and 4 touchdowns, and a 34-20 victory over the Jets. We talked about the Oakland Raiders earlier on the show. Latavius Murray ran for 113 yards. Andre Holmes caught 2 touchdown passes, and the ageless wonder Charles Woodson intercepted his league-leading 5th pass of the season to give the Raiders their first winning record this late in a season since 2011. Ryan Fitzpatrick left this game for the Jets on the opening drive with a thumb injury. They have lost 2 straight games. They were never the same once Geno Smith came into the game. The Raiders all over the Jets yesterday, 34-20.
And we already talked mightily about the Packers and the Broncos, so we're going to make this our final game of this Monday roundup. One of the other late game between the Seahawks and the Cowboys in a game that only featured 1 touchdown. That's Russell Wilson in the second quarter hitting Luke Wilson for a 22-yard score. Russell Wilson went 19 for 30 for 210 yards, a TD, and a score. Wilson also ran for 32 yards. Jimmy Graham, the leading receiver for the Seahawks, with 75 yards on 7 catches. Matt Castle yesterday, 13 for 25 for 97 yards. Darren McFadden, 64 yards rushing and 49 yards out of the air. Greg Hardy also with a nice interception off Wilson, which would result in a Dan Bailey field goal to take the lead at 12-10. Seahawks ended up taking a drive down at the very end. Seahawks win 13-12 on a Stephen Hauschka late field goal. The Seahawks improved to 4-4. Dallas goes to 2-5. Des Bryant ended up with 2 catches for 12 yards on the day, including a 15-yard pass. So that's our roundup for this Monday. So we're going to take a break. When we come back, lots of page 2s, more about Le'Veon Bell, more about Colin Kaepernick. Lots of injuries this week in the NFL. We're going to run through some of the more gruesome ones. That, page 2s, what grinds my gears, and a whole lot more as we keep going here. This is the Jubiler on WNIA, Niagara University's Mix and More Radio.
Be sure to connect with us on our Facebook and Twitter pages, or email the show at thejubiler@gmail.com. Missed the show? Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jubiler, for inside access and replays for the show. That's the Jubiler, Mondays and Fridays, 1 to 2 p.m. on WNIA Radio, Niagara University's radio for Mix and More.
Missed the show? Don't worry, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jubiler, for the inside access with Greg and Kyle. That's the Jubiler, Mondays and Fridays, 1 to 2 p.m. on WNIA Radio, Niagara University's radio for Mix and More.
Hey, this is Greg Jubert and Kyle Barker, and this is WNIA, Niagara University's Mix and More Radio.
Catch our show, The Jubler, Mondays and Fridays, 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern, and make sure to connect with us on Facebook and Twitter.
That's The Jubler, Mondays and Fridays from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern on WNIA.
You are looking live.
Alrighty, welcome back to the show. We apologize for this here. We are having a little bit of a technical issue here with the computer here, as the computer decided not to work a little bit. Oh, here we go. There it goes.
And you. Here are your hosts, Greg Juber and Kyle Barker.
Hi, welcome back. This is the second time we're going to try this. Hello and welcome back to the Jubilant here on WNIA Radio, Niagara University's radio for Mix and More. Big day yesterday in all facets of sports. We're going to cover our quick page twos today as we're going to quickly get into them. We're going to start early and often here. We are going to start with the National Basketball Association. Kobe Bryant has been highly critical of himself. He harshly criticized himself after his third straight poor performance to open the regular season last night. He said, "I'm the 200th best player in the league right now." The Lakers lost 103-93 to the Dallas Mavericks at the Staples Center on Sunday. Bryant scored 15 points on 3 of 15 from the floor. He, quote, says, "I freaking suck." Moving on now to some more news in the NBA. The Charlotte Hornets are on course to sign swingman Jeremy Lamb to a contract extension for 3 years and worth $21 million before Monday's midnight deadline for such extensions, according to league sources. That is a source given to us from ESPN. Moving on now to Newark, New Jersey. New York Islanders captain and leading scorer John Tavares missed the game last night. He was a late scratch against the Buffalo Sabres. A few Islanders have missed games with illnesses in the recent days. Tavares again leads the team with 5 goals and 6 assists. Moving on now yesterday to Arlington, Texas. Seattle Seahawks defensive lineman Michael Bennett was a little miffed yesterday with the Dallas Cowboys and head coach Jason Garrett for their response following safety Jeff Heath's hit on wide receiver Ricardo Lockett on a punt return Sunday. Bennett said, "I thought it was a classless play from everybody down." Bennett said, "I thought their coach could have come out to the aid of our player to see if he was okay. That's what Seattle Seahawks coach Pete Carroll would have done. I thought Jason Garrett could have done a better job than that." Moving on now to Baltimore. Steve Smith Sr. lay face first and motionless immediately after he sustained his season-ending Achilles injury yesterday in the third quarter, and the Baltimore Ravens' 29-26 win over the Chargers. Towel over his face. He was dropped in arms over trainers and was carried to the sideline. Story here is that John Harbaugh believes that Steve Smith Sr. will reconsider his retirement and come back to the team next year. That is a 50-50 according to his agent at the moment, and we will find out more in the coming days ahead. The New York Mets are expected to modestly pursue Yoenis Cespedes as a free agent, but a team official told ESPN.com it is highly likely he signs somewhere else. The same can also be said for Daniel Murphy and Tyler Clippard. Also, moving on now, we talked about Ryan Fitzpatrick had an injury with a sprained thumb. Le'Veon Bell. We also had Reggie Bush slipping on concrete in St. Louis. He tore his ACL. And Matt Forte also was injured yesterday. He walked under his own power to the locker room. It's still unsure what he had. That's my page twos. What do you have for us, Greg?
Leading off, the NCAA is reportedly looking at this, and are discussing right now, adopting a centralized replay model like the National Football League and Major League Baseball have in place after that Miami-Duke game back on Saturday night. In other news, moving on now, Peyton Manning's quarterback wins mark is now at 186. That currently ties Brett Favre for the most all-time. Notre Dame is reportedly firing their academic coach amid allegations of coercing players into having sex with her daughter.
Whoa.
Yeah. Salvador Perez, I don't think we mentioned, was World Series MVP. Get that in there right now. Here's a big one. Over the weekend, Ohio State quarterback J.T. Barrett was arrested while driving while intoxicated. He is going to forfeit his scholarship for a term after his arrest. Braxton Miller will now serve as the backup to Cardale Jones. Seahawks receiver Ricardo Lockett will undergo neck surgery for a ligament damage caused by that big hit. Reports are that the prognosis is good. Finally, Bills say, according to Rex Ryan, that Percy Harvin is back with the team with his hip injury and wants to contribute. He also expects Tyrod Taylor to be 100% for this Sunday at home against Miami. And a couple of those injuries we talked about. Cameron Wake had the torn Achilles back last Thursday night. He's done for the year. Reggie Bush slipping on the concrete at the Edward Jones Dome at the end of a run. Matt Forte has a knee injury, so he did not return, although he did walk under his own power in the third quarter. And then Browns corners, or Browns defensive backs for that matter, Joe Hayden, Dante Whitner, both left the game with concussions suffered on back-to-back plays. It's unlikely that either one of them, with the Browns playing the Bengals this Thursday night, highly unlikely, again, that either one of them will end up playing. So that's our page 2s for this week. Now, let's go into what else, but what really grinds my gears.
You know what really grinds my gears?
How on earth does Barry Church not make that tackle? It's not that hard. The secondary was horrendous last night for Dallas.
Wait a minute. That's the smartest thing I've ever heard anyone say about anything.
In their hands, we're going to overtime if we can just make one stop. One stop. No. CJ Spiller, 80 yards down the field.
It's time for what grinds my gears with Kyle Barker.
Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. You kidding me? Playoffs? I just hope we can win a game.
Hello everybody and welcome back here to the Jube Alert. Kyle Barker here for What Grinds My Gears. I did promise last show that I would stop talking about the Dallas Cowboys as much as I want to just yell at the Dallas Cowboys right now for another wonderful performance in Jerry World. I'm not going to.
After all, you did promise last week.
I did promise I wouldn't. I'll do that on a different thing, I think. I think I might do a YouTube video just so you can all watch me rant. But my thing this week is, what in the world does the NFL consider a catch? There was a non-catch yesterday for Darren McFadden. Caught the ball and, come on. He took like 4 steps and fumbled it. It was clearly a fumble, and they ruled it an incomplete pass. There was an article out today that even NFL officials don't know what a catch is. So we have Des Bryant catch. That's a controversy. We have the Calvin Johnson one from a couple years ago. We have last week in Detroit, whether that was a touchdown or not. That was clearly not a touchdown by Golden Tate. And then we have yesterday where Darren McFadden clearly catches and takes about 6 steps and fumbles the ball, and they rule it an incomplete pass, and Seattle doesn't get possession of the ball. Good thing Seattle didn't get possession of the ball. It didn't really matter, but it was good at the time. But that's what grinds my gears today, is no one really knows what a catch is in the NFL anymore. I don't even know what a catch is. I have no idea what a catch is. So that's my what grinds my gears today. If you want to hear me rant about the Cowboys, tweet us at WNIA Jubilert. If you want me to do it, I'll do it. I have plenty to say about Matt Castle and Jason Garrett. I'm not afraid to unleash it.
You understand, this is like borderline unhealthy, what you're doing to yourself.
I have no choice.
Yes, you do.
I have no choice.
Yes, you do. Oh, my God. Give me a break.
This team should not be 2-5. It should not happen in a million years with how talented that team should be. They should also not let a struggling quarterback in Russell Wilson drive the ball down like he did in the fourth quarter there yesterday.
For all the kids listening out there, it's just a game. Life moves on.
No, it does not. Not when you're a Cowboy. Not when you're a Dallas Cowboys fan. You just have to be a fan to understand. You just have to.
All right, well, that's enough of what grinds my gears for this week. Do we want to do trivia now, or do we want to wait till after the break?
Nah, we'll do it now. Why
All
not?
right, I got a good one for you too this week.
You have a good one for me.
I have a very good one.
Well, I'm anxious to hear it. Let's rock and roll some trivia.
Let me do mine first while I have mine right up. All right. This one comes after seeing Alcides Escobar hit an inside the park home run in this World Series.
Okay.
Who is the only player in baseball history ever to hit a walk-off inside the park grand slam? A walk-off inside the park grand slam. It's only happened once in history.
Only happened once in history. This seems like a Little League type of thing. I'm guessing this is a long, long time ago.
The year, I'll give you the year. The year was 1956. Here, I'll give you another hint. This should help. It was the Pirates and the Cubs in this game.
Yeah, no idea.
All right. That was the one and only, the great Roberto Clemente.
Roberto Clemente.
At the very beginning of his career, yes, in 1956, did it in a game against the Cubs. So
I didn't even like. I mean, I knew.
Because Clemente is more known for his 60s and 70s.
Yeah,
came into the Pirates in 1955.
Huh. Well, are you ready for yours, Greg?
Sure.
Okay.
Wait.
You always gotta take this pause. Ready now?
Now.
All right. So the Kansas City Royals won their first World Series championship since 1985, 4-1 with a Sunday night, Monday morning win, 7-2 over the New York Mets in 12 innings. Can you name the 8 Major League teams that have never won the series? And just as a bonus, can you include the 2 that have never made it to the Fall Classic? But start off with the 8 teams that have never won one.
The 8 teams that have never won a World Series. Okay, we'll start with the Rays.
Yes.
Let's see, that's the AL East. This is a very good one. The Astros have never won one.
Astros are correct. There's 2.
Are we counting the Oakland A's in here?
No.
Texas is definitely one.
Texas is another one.
Let me think. AL Central.
No, because Oakland has won a World Series.
How about Detroit's technically won one, correct?
Yes.
Detroit hasn't won one in a long time, though, in like 30 years. Okay. What are we doing with the Nationals, then?
Nationals are correct.
Nationals.
So that eliminates the former Expos, so you don't have to say Montreal. That's taken care of the Nationals.
Okay. Colorado.
Colorado, correct. Okay, you're working yourself through this one.
We've never won one. That's 5, right? I think 5.
That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yes.
Okay. The Padres? No, I take that back. The Padres have never won one.
Yep, Padres have never won one.
The Padres made it in 1998 or 9 against the Yankees. Okay.
You have 1.
I have 2, I think,
left. You have 2 more. You already named a team that did not make it to the World Series.
Okay.
2 more teams.
Okay.
For the 8.
This is a very good one, but it's certainly a mind teaser.
It's one you have to work yourself through.
I'm going through every division. Milwaukee's won one, right?
Milwaukee is not won one.
Milwaukee is not won one.
So there's your. I'll give you a gimme for that one. So you have 1 more.
1 more that has never won one. Well, I'd cover the AL East. AL Central, the Indians won one back in like 1940 something.
Yep.
Oh, Seattle.
Seattle, there you go.
Seattle, and then
can you name
Seattle's never made a World Series?
Yep,
correct?
Seattle's never made it. Can you name the other team out of those 8 that have not made it?
Well, if we're counting the Nationals, then them.
The Nationals, then there you go. You got it. You nailed it.
Just got to work your way through that one. Get it down to the wire. Okay, so.
I hate to bother you, but we have a tweet request.
A tweet request?
We do. It was mentioned.
Really?
It was mentioned directly to me. I believe this is one of your buddies. Can you read the name here?
Let me.
John McElligott.
J. McElligott.
Yes. Yeah. At @KBarker_NU rant about the Cowboys.
Well, you know, careful what you wish for.
Here. I'll tell you what, John. We're short on time, but I will put a YouTube special out for you on the Jube page sometime in the next couple days of my everything that's wrong with the Dallas Cowboys. How does that sound? We'll split it. We'll make it even.
That'll work. That'll work. Maybe not for like your blood pressure, but that could work.
I'm not sure if this whole school wants to hear me yell again.
You've made that loud and clear. Let's go into something bigger. Let's talk about the 2 upcoming games this week. End of this week, Week 8 in the NFL, is tonight. Colts at Panthers. Andrew Luck, they've been saying, has been beat up with fractured ribs since Week 3. Carolina's playing really good football right now in all 3 phases of the game. I'm taking Carolina the whole way. I think Cam's going to have a big day. I think the Carolina running game's going to have another big game. You have any picks?
Carolina for me. Cam Newton and that Panthers team is looking really good. Andrew Luck's fighting through more injuries than we thought he had. I'm ready for some Monday Night Football tonight. I'm interested in this game. This game is going to be better than I think most people think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a close game, and I think it's actually going to be a really exciting game. It's very intriguing. You have a struggling Colts team and a Carolina team who people think that they're really not as good as 6-0. I think they're a legit 6-0 team. It's going to be a fun game to watch, but I have Carolina by 3 in this one.
I'm going to say a little more. I'm going to say Carolina by... I'll say Carolina wins 27-16.
Alrighty.
I don't think Indy's offense can really flourish mightily. And then finally, we're going to talk quickly. Let's go Thursday Night Football. How about Browns at Bengals in a game that's been highly advertised since it's the first game strictly to NFL Network. Cincinnati should roll all over them. Josh McCown has been struggling, having a lot of ups and downs all year. Joe Hayden and Dante Whitner, like we said, both have concussions. They're both a big part of that Cleveland secondary, which also includes Tayshaun Gibson and Traymon Williams. Cincinnati's going to have their way. They had a bit of a scare back this past Sunday. It took a long time before Andy Dalton hit the end zone to A.J. Green on a 9-yard score. I like the Bengals big in this game. I don't think by halftime it's going to be much of a game even to watch.
Cincinnati, for me, too, going to roll over the Browns on Thursday night.
All right, so there are our picks, basically Panthers and Bengals for this week. Any final thoughts before we cut out for the weekend?
Final thoughts. Well, Syracuse basketball starts tonight. They have an exhibition against Lemoyne. Don't think I'll be able to watch, but hopefully the new team is good and looking good for the season ahead. We kind of got screwed over by the NCAA and infractions and all that wonderful stuff. But I think the Syracuse team is resilient enough to overcome the Boeheim 9-game suspension in the ACC. Really, really looking forward to college basketball. I cannot wait for it to start. Hockey's already started, so that makes me very happy, man. But college basketball and hockey at the same time, and football, best time of the year. Can't wait.
Yesterday was actually only the 15th time in the history of the core 4 sports that all 4 have been playing on the same day. Quickly now, my final thoughts. ESPN Wednesday night, couple big games. Knicks at Cavs in the NBA, and then a big testy matchup between the Clippers and Warriors. Then on TNT Thursday, Thunder Bulls, Grizzlies, Trailblazers. So that's going to do it for this Monday, this first Monday of November. Alongside Kyle Barker, I'm Greg Jube. As always, remember, like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, subscribe to our YouTube channel, Jubilert. That will do it for today.
By the way, apologies for the YouTube channel. We've had some issues uploading the recent episodes. That has been corrected, so all episodes from here on out will be uploaded.
All right, so there you have it. So alongside Kyle Barker, I am Greg Jubert. This has been the Jubiler on WNIA Niagara University's Mix and More Radio. Have a great Monday. Have a great rest of the week. We'll see you back here at Friday at 1.
Up you can. Put it on the board. Yes.
Top shelf where Mama hides the cookies.
Unbelievable. Oh, what a game. Unbelievable. What a game. RUCLA.